I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks for writing part 1 and 2. So whether it is academic, general, computer-based or paper-based, eventually it is going to help you. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's sum up part 1 and 2. We have a minimum of 150 words in part 1 and about 250 minimum in part 2. There is a lot of confusion among candidates who are taking IELTS tests, and they keep on asking the wrong questions. For example, a lot of people will go on providing their analysis and their critique in part 1, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's wrong. And they will not provide enough information for part 2. So it is very important for you to understand the marking criteria for both of these tasks and then write accordingly. So part 1, as I said earlier, is a minimum of 150 words, but it should not be over 200. And the same goes with part 2. While the minimum word count is 250, just try to remain under 300. The more you write, the higher the chances of making grammatical and spelling errors. And that's where everything goes downhill. So here are my tips on how you can improve your scores in both of these parts. Tip number 1, always follow the instructions. What you really need to focus on is how well you understand the question. So there are multiple types of questions in part 1. When it comes to academic, the questions could be a chart, a pie chart, a bar graph, any sort of a table, or could be a map that you are going to explain in about 150 to 200 words. And what you need to do is that you need to look out for the keywords. Now here is an example. You can see that through all of those years, there are about 4 different categories. So you have the annual sales category for handheld devices, for online games, for smartphone games, and for consoles. For all these 4 categories, if you have to write them in less than 150 words, in less than 200 words, there are going to be about 5 or 6 paragraphs. So first of all, it's going to be your introduction, which is an actual rewrite of the statement. The second point, the second paragraph is going to talk about the first point. It could be talking about consoles. The second one, which basically turns out to be the third paragraph, can talk about the explosion in mobile games. The fourth paragraph could be the third point, basically. It could be on mobile games. The fourth one could be on handheld devices. So each and every single one of these should be written in one paragraph, and it should follow a logical order. Point number 2, you need to have a close look at the punctuation. The first letter of each word that starts right in the beginning of the sentence is always capitalized. And there's always going to be a full stop after once the sentence is complete. Now, I have come across a lot of people's IELTS test takers' essays, and I've been giving them a review, and it is appalling for me to see that there is no punctuation. There's a missing comma, there's a missing full stop. The first letter of the word is not capitalized. Point number 3, you need to make sure that if you are talking in a specific tense, then your paragraph should remain focused on that tense and the type of words that you're using. Now let's move on to part number 2. Is all about critical analysis. And there are multiple types of questions that you can answer. So for example, the first type of question could be an advantages or disadvantages. The second one could be agreeing, disagreeing. The third one could be partial agreeing or partial disagreeing and sharing your opinion. Nevertheless, what you have to do is take both of the sides and then provide your own opinion and justify it with relevant examples. Now, there are many questions that you can find online for part 2, and almost all of them will have this statement that discuss both views, or they'll say discuss the pros and cons, or they'll say discuss advantages and disadvantages, and provide your opinion with reasons and justifications from your practical examples. Now, the marking criteria according to IELTS, there are basically 4 marking criteria, both for part 1 and 2. These are lexical resources, grammatical range, cohesion and coherence, and task achievement. In order to score a high band score, you need to have a unique answer. And the only way to have a unique answer is that if you provide your own life story, your own practical example, it just adds a unique flavor to the essay. Now, first part is only a summary. It has no critical analysis. So if the first part is having a fluctuation in figures, you're not going to talk about why those figures were fluctuated. You're not going to talk about or discuss whether or not it was the economy or it was the government policies that resulted in a high or low sales figures of mobile games or any part that you see. You're not going to give any specific reasons. But part 2 is always about reasons. It is the exact opposite. It just tests your abilities of how well you are in expressing your thoughts and ideas. Last but not the least, this is super important and critical. Do not spend more than 15 minutes on part 1 and never more than 20 or 25 minutes in part 2, because you need time to go back, edit and proofread, which is much harder when doing a paper-based test than it is going for a computer-based test. And here's a little secret for you. If by now you are still not confident, I would strongly suggest you opt for a computer-based, because it is super easy for you to go back, make changes, do the edits, proofread the essay, and rewrite it in a way that is able to give you a high band score. Because once you write with pen and paper, it's going to be extremely challenging for you to go back, edit, proofread, cut out. It's just going to be adding a lot of mess onto the paper. It's going to create mess, and your examiner may not have a good time. He or she won't enjoy checking your paper. But when it is computer-based, you can always make as many edits as you can. You can always go back, always improvise, always improve, always refine your ideas, polish them, so that whatever you're saying at the end of the day, it's all making sense. So it took me about 10 minutes to do part 1 and about 20 minutes for part 2. And I still had 30 minutes for both of these tasks. So I went back and I kept on rereading what I had written in earlier. And it just brought up new ideas to my mind. I would just go back, a new idea pops into my head, I just pull out the answer, and I just jot everything that came to my mind, and I would improve it. I would always look for new synonyms. I would always look to ensure that there is no repetition in words in what I'm writing. So that's it you need to focus on, but you need a lot of time to practice. At the end of this video, here's a good advice for you. If you have never given IELTS before, if you don't know anything about writing, you need no less than 2 to 3 months to practice just writing and speaking. So give yourself an ample amount of time to practice. Find a speaking partner, find a partner with whom you can share your writing samples so that you are on the same page as the examiner are. The writing criteria for IELTS is not that difficult. But since I understand that IELTS test takers are people from non-native speaking countries, it gets a bit hard for them to follow all the instructions and write accordingly. They just have to write logically in a plain order with all the right ideas and content and covering everything according to the marking criteria. If you like the video, go ahead and let me know in the comments. And if there's anything new that you've found, anything that you want to ask or share, I'd love to answer. That's it for today. And do go ahead and sub to my channel, click the bell icon, and I'll see you in another video. Take care. Bye-bye.